I thought you were Christian, Dennis. I am. That's why I want to switch to the butt, 'cause it's not a sin.
It's God's wish, my dear. All right.
Hello, friends. Trace amounts of science. Welcome back to ReddX. Indeed, we're jumping into the Married Mary saga today. This is part number 8. If you missed the previous ones, those links in the description. We'll delay no longer, and we will jump right into it. The Golden Weasel. Dennis. Married Mary, Part 8A. Oh, we're getting into subsections of parts now. Little side tangents and stuff. That's good. It's really good. Looking forward to it. I've deleted the chapter where I meet Whiskers for a drink and have an unremarkable conversation with him for a few reasons. A, the conversation's boring. B, dude's wearing his mask, so we can't even laugh at him for being beardy. And C, I've gone back over the entire Mary saga and I'm disappointed in my writing. I'm not in my feelings right now at all, but PSA, everyone has feelings. It's okay to get mired in them from time to time, as long as you can take a step back and look at things objectively once you've processed. So I'm determined to make this story make sense. And in order to do so, I think I have to dive into the Dennis debacle. I'm not so good at the feelings part, but I am glad that you're rewriting story number 8. It's just more for us to sink our teeth into, isn't it? The Married Mary saga is over halfway narrated as of the time of writing this, so please allow me to attempt whatever damage control I can cram in before the story wraps up. Starting with my biggest blunder, I only mentioned my major love interest, Dennis, a handful of times, but my crush on him loomed quite large, as crushes tend to do. That's probably why they call it a crush. It was gargantuan, ginormous, mammoth, and monstrous enough to blind me to any other man's nasty-ass attempts to hit on me after he just finger-blasted a legbeard on stage, perhaps unwillingly. I mean, I don't think that's a thing that happens unwillingly. He was willing enough to leave it in there to pickle. It's too late to rewrite the earlier chapters and tell the story from a somewhat deranged, lovesick perspective, at least for the purpose of ReddX videos. However, I am turning the story into a novel, so I've already started having a blast channeling my ridiculously lovesick and melodramatic 20-something self. I probably could channel something like that, but nah, 20-year-old me, that's best left in the past, let me tell you. I'm not sure if it's the type of cringe that you guys subscribed for, but I feel confident that there's an audience for it somewhere. And it might play to this audience, or at least a subset of this audience. We'll have to find that out together. Yeah, willing to roll the dice, whatever. We've been rolling the dice a lot lately. Just be young, have fun, you know?
Oh yeah, why not? Just do it. Be young, have fun, stay cool.
And so that brings us into The Golden Weasel. Please allow me to properly introduce you to a guy I should have been openly obsessing over from the very beginning of this story. Demonstrate value, engage physically, nurture dependence, neglect emotionally, inspire hope, and then separate entirely. D-E-N-N-I-S. Dennis. The Golden God's indifference was harrowing. Yeah, quit playing games with my heart, you. I was so distraught. I was so in love. The exquisite agony of yearning for a man just out of my grasp. His presence alone could poison my poise. I never thought my eyes could rain a river that would smear, but after I fell in love with Dennis, I understood what middling poets meant by drowning in your tears. Wistful sigh. Yeah, this is going to be a new brand of cringe. Like I said, I'm game. We'll roll along with it. The disgusting stuff was so amazing, I'm sure this is going to be amazing in a different way. So Dennis was a massive dweeb, who looked a lot like Moss from the IT crowd, only much, much shorter. I'm 5'3", and the dude only seemed taller than me because his wild hair added an inch or two to his stature. He was a nerdy, chic, short king, if you will. He wasn't conventionally hot, but I personally found him unbearably attractive. Dennis was at the top of his class, in the cohort above me. He was polite to everyone, he laughed easily, and he had a theatrical background to boot. I mean, you're into what you're into. I'm not going to judge you for that. As long as the personality connects. As long as you guys are both seeking the same thing, which apparently you aren't, but we'll get there. So Dennis had played Seymour in a fall production of The Little Shop of Horrors during his second year as a psychological research grad student, and I had seen the show. I quickly recognized him as Seymour on the first day of abnormal psych in the spring semester, and we instantly bonded over theatrical nerdery, and Dennis talked my ear off about himself long after class had ended. Yeah, red flag number 1. Gotta put that ego in check, although, again, young. But even from a young age, I don't really like talking about myself too much. A little bit, here and there, as needed. But really, that is the easiest way to win on a first date. You just ask questions and let them talk. Apparently, Dennis's dream role was Shay in Evita. He wanted to teach at SUNY after he graduated since his best friend from high school lived in Buffalo, New York. He made extra cash bartending, although Dennis himself did not drink. He wasn't a recovering alcoholic or anything, he just didn't like losing control. I respected that. He also loved Weezer. Hey, so did I! Yeah, me too, actually. The Blue album's the only album that ever made me cry. It just tapped into something deep inside myself. Dennis asked me if I had any sort of job, and I began to tell him about my party princess gigs. He glazed over and grabbed my necklace. Dennis: "Oh, cool, nice. Is that a Fermata?" I nodded. Uh-huh. Why had it made my toes tingly when his fingertips grazed my sternum? Dennis: "Cool. That means hold me, right?" I nodded again. He took my hand and dramatically bent to kiss it. I could smell his hair. It smelled like mandarins and mountain air. Come on, doesn't he at least have head lice? Some dandruff, maybe? No, we can't say that. That's the dude OP is swooning for. He's a prince among men at this point. Until he's not anymore. OP says I desperately wanted to touch his hair, but he rose and sauntered away before I had a chance to react to his gesture. I remember thinking that he carried himself so very gracefully. I mean, that's easier at 5'3" than it is at 6'2", you know what I'm saying? Class got canceled the next week because the professor had some sort of family emergency, so I had a full 2 weeks to ruminate over my initial interaction with Dennis. We hadn't exchanged contact info since we assumed that we'd see each other the following week, but by the time 2 full weeks had passed, I had created an entire man only inside of my mind. He looked like Dennis. He sounded like Dennis. He smelled like mandarins and mountain air. He was a theater dude who liked to listen to Weezer and was planning to teach at SUNY Buffalo. Those things were accurate and therefore harmless. And now for the crap that I made up. Dennis was also into video games, and his favorite was Mass Effect. I wasn't very good at that one, so he'd walk me through Mass Effect, and I'd let him feel like the sexy teacher. He'd sit behind me and wrap his arms around me, and we'd share the controller until I got the hang of it, and in return, I would show him the best loot locations and mini-bosses on Pandora. Is this like just a daydreaming section? Are we creating events that never happened in our own mind? I mean, I'll love to do that. But yeah, we can't drag it into reality. Then it becomes crazy. He was incredibly smart in a way that complemented my brand of intelligence. We were both book smart, but Dennis was better at discerning a person's true intentions. This made him slightly less likable, but his skepticism balanced out my Pollyanna outlook, and my Pollyanna outlook softened his skepticism in a way that made him seem easier to talk to. And we looked adorable together. Again, this was all fantasy, but it had spiraled out of control over those 2 weeks. And by the time I saw Dennis again, I was fully infatuated with the version of him that I had created, and thus I was nervous as hell to even say hello. Can't even feel bad. Yeah, you did this to yourself. Put him on a pedestal. Never put anybody on a pedestal. Not yourself, not anybody. I'm serious. But eventually OP did nut up and greeted Dennis, and he returned the gesture. He prattled on about himself some more after class, and I listened with dilated pupils and body language that mimicked his. He told me about a disastrous tech rehearsal for a little shop where Audrey 2 had busted and a stagehand had to become a puppeteer. I laughed too hard, even though the story was only mildly amusing, and I worried that my eyeliner was too heavy. Stop it, Val! Dennis is speaking! Shh! You're just gonna make me sad with this. When men do it to women, when women do it to men, no pedestals, I'm serious. Okay, sure. He was talking about himself a lot. Why wasn't I annoyed by this? Well, in my personal experience, if a guy wanted to tell me all about himself, that meant that he was into me. Why wasn't he asking me about myself if he was into me? Well, that's because he wanted to get me into all the things that he liked. My interests didn't really matter, since his ultimate aim was to customize them. I honestly thought that was the way male-female romantic relationships were quote-unquote supposed to work at that point in my life, because I had only dated guys who acted like this. Yeah, that's why dudes are so terrified of any chick with a history. It's like, she likes things that I didn't teach her to do. It's like, good. That's healthy. Maybe she could teach you a thing, or, well, you feel emasculated by that. It's just insanity. But how did he know that he was into me if he wasn't asking me so many questions? Well, I suppose I made his wiener feel weird for whatever reason, so eventually I would grow to righteously resent this approach to dating, but I wasn't quite there yet. Yeah, learn and grow. That's how it be. He went on and on about having been a camp counselor in high school. Camp Mohawk. Still remember that name because I thought it sounded edgy and punk. It does. I had a mohawk in high school. I would have loved to go to Camp Mohawk. Then he told me that it was just a rather culturally insensitive name that they had come up with back in the 1950s and had never bothered to change. I think culturally insensitive is a stretch there, but okay. He would lead the campers on hikes through the mountains, and he apparently told the best ghost stories thanks to his theatrical background. I told him I'd love to hear one of his ghost stories, and he promised that he'd have one for me the following week. I tried to talk about video games, and Dennis steered the conversation back to his beloved camp. It was in a beautiful part of upstate New York, and he intended to build a country house and spend his summers there once he had tenure. Yeah, he did make it sound lovely. I wondered if I would be able to genuinely enjoy a country house near the Catskills, or if I'd have to play pretend in order to make myself the perfect partner for the Golden God. A little pretending and some minor discomfort would totally be worth it if I were able to have Dennis in my life well into our later years, right? Nah. Actually, you'll probably come to resent those differences in time. There's got to be a little give and take, you know what I'm saying? Can't throw away everything that you want because Dennis says. But again, we're learning and growing. In a way, I just want to yell at my younger self for getting all mushy over this bozo and romanticizing a place I'd never even thought about just because he loved it. But then I considered that if the interpersonal connection had been legit, letting him choose the location of our summer house wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world. If we had genuinely clicked on a meaningful level, I would have loved upstate New York simply because it had a special place in his heart. Alas, Dennis didn't give a fuck about me, so all this hypothetical willingness to compromise for the sake of our imaginary relationship was totally cringe. Yeah, what can I say? The brain chemicals make you do crazy things sometimes. They make you think some shit. That's like their whole job. Okay, I'm starting to hit my limit with the mushy crap, although I will have to circle back to it at some point. Hopefully you get the idea. Dennis wasn't a menace yet. He wasn't a neckbeard. He wasn't socially inappropriate. He smelled good. He had great stories. He was charismatic. I already had a crush on him, so he barely had to do anything to make me swoon, but he was fucking full of himself. You don't say. But let's pop over to the spring stage. my personal favorite local theater, and meet one of my best friends in the world, my voice teacher, even to this very day, and we'll call him Darius. At my voice lesson the next week, I was all shifty and giggly as I warmed up, and Darius said, "What's with you this week? Wait, don't tell me. It's a boy." OP giggling. Yeah, you know me too well. I have the biggest crush on this guy from grad school, and he's in the theater community, so you might know him. Darius, do tell. OP, Dennis Gold. He played Seymour. Darius, oh my god, Val. That guy's a little weasel. My wife ran tech for a show he did at the Penny, and she said he was a total prima donna. I've met him a few times, and yeah, he's nothing but a braggadocious butthead. I feigned indignation. No, he's not. He's such a sweetheart, and he's so funny. Darius, funny how? I started to stammer something, but I wasn't sure that I had an actual answer. Yeah, it's the same 4 relatable stories he's probably told to everybody in his life, and if you marry him, you will hear them again. Oh, will you hear them again? Darius says, he's only funny if he's got a script. Anything that seems amusing is probably from some pickup artist website or some obscure play that he studied at that pretentious theater camp that he went to. OP, the one in the Catskills? He said it was outdoorsy and rugged. Darius laughed out loud. That prissy little pansy man wouldn't last 10 minutes in the rugged outdoors. I lived in New York a few years ago. That camp is where a bunch of rich theater kids stay in a renovated mansion down the street from a swanky dinner theater. They practice their show for 6 weeks and then perform it for all their snooty rich parents. It's nowhere near the Catskills. It's in Manhattan. Is this like a time before Google where we couldn't fact check? I guess you wouldn't have a reason to fact check it. But yeah, there you go. The trust has been torpedoed. Something between my chest and my belly button suddenly felt tight. I stared blankly at the sheet music in front of me. Truth be told, a cushy mansion and a performance at a swanky dinner theater seemed a lot more to my liking than rugged mountaineering. But why had Dennis lied? Oh, he must have wanted to seem more masculine, and that meant that he must have liked me. So, thusly, I no longer cared about the lie. There's some gold medal mental gymnastics going on right now. You should call him out on it, for real. That's the only way that this thing can succeed for an extended period of time. For your own sake, do it. And while I 100% believe Darius about the prima donna attitude and the incessant bragging, because I could kind of see that already, those traits didn't bother me. A lot of time would pass before I would fully understand the difficulties associated with getting somewhat romantically involved with a male prima donna who had the emotional sensitivity of a fucking turd. Well, yeah, but again, we live and learn. Feeling empowered and having convinced myself that Dennis definitely liked me, I paid to have my hair done, wore a low-cut top and a push-up bra to class, and made sure to top off my look with the Fermata necklace. Did my ridiculous seduction preparation work? Actually, yeah, kinda. That was the day when Dennis finally suggested that we exchange contact info. See? It's really easy to understand what dudes are interested in. OP says I was overjoyed! Lucy knew about my crush, but she didn't actually know Dennis, so I called her and gushed about the exchanging of phone numbers and Facebooks. Oh my god, it's getting really real, Lucy! Lucy was very, very relationship-minded. That's one of the reasons her hatred of Mary's fat, cheating ass ran so deep. Personally, I'd had exactly zero interest in having a serious relationship after I finally broke up with the fart-knocking Jar Jar Binks. He wasn't a bad dude, not by any means. We were incompatible as hell in the bedroom, though, and I acted like a total bitch to him, accusing him of being positively wretched in the sack. I used to tell him, mocking his obnoxious Jar Jar Binks voice, "Every time you so horny, me dries up." Jar Jar, "No, me so want to pussy, please." What are we talking about right now? Does he actually do a Jar Jar? Is it better than mine? Tell me it's not better than mine! In truth, the boom boom wasn't working because I was too inexperienced to identify, much less articulate, what was making me uncomfortable. I mean, I'd tell my girlfriends, imagine getting bumpily humped by some dude who just ripped a ripe one and is dropping P-bombs in a Jar Jar Binks voice. Then he pulls a dramatic O face after just a few pumps.
Megan! You now have herpes.
But all that was absurdity and really only a small fraction of the problem. It sounded funny when I only told the worst of the worst experiences, and so that became my go-to narrative on girls' nights, but he didn't actually act like a goofball in the bedroom every single time, and he wasn't actually a preemie. I only added that part when I was mad at him. Like I said, I was a bitch. What percentage of the time does he do the Jar Jar Binks voice? What percentage of the time is he actually premature? He does seem like a really weird dude, like... I guess the theater thing is enough to hold it all together. But I will say, he makes me uncomfortable. He seems like a little bit of a weirdo. OP says the truth was that I hated his brand of dirty talk. His body language, his O face, the sounds he made in his sleep, his obsession with the Phantom Menace, and his unwillingness to let me pick a movie. But I had a lot of fun going to shows with him, and I enjoyed his stand-up. Tons of fart jokes. And he had a really cool dog. Okay, back to the bitchin' though. Now, can we talk about the stand-up? I probably would have enjoyed that too. You can't build your entire act on poop jokes, but they could definitely make up a bulk of the foundation. Jar Jar seemed to have been extremely inspired by the nography we'd insisted we watch together. I wasn't impressed. And he would always get aggressive and pull stupid faces like the male actors did. Yet he would make the sounds that the female actors made. It was super weird. And he lacked the emotional maturity to imagine that his way of doing things might not be every woman's personal preference, despite there being a possibly creepy age gap between us, 9 years. Not so bad when both parties are adulty adults, but it might be creepy when the female's 20 and the man's pushing 30. It probably depends on the personalities involved. I mean, honestly, that's big enough to prick my ears up. Is 20 really like an adulty adult? I don't think your prefrontal cortex is even fully solidified yet. Or maybe it is for women. It's not for men. Something like that. Whatever. You can look it up. There's your science for the day. The whole thing might sound a bit beardy, and yeah, maybe it was. I still wouldn't classify Jar Jar as a neckbeard. He could be a know-it-all, but he wasn't overly entitled, and if anything, he had a deflated sense of self. He wasn't smelly or gross, aside from the frequent flatulence, which he probably did because I found it hilarious at first. But you see, I'm a fart joke connoisseur, while Jar Jar liked to pretend that he was a fart sommelier. He would rip one into the couch cushion, get up, and start describing the peaty, earthy tones and the gentle sulfur finish. It was pretty funny, though. And Opie says, yeah, that was funny as hell to me the first time he did it, but it got old. And it eventually became gross and annoying, especially when he ostentatiously broke wind when it was indisputably socially inappropriate to do so. I really wish I had a video of my dad, a typically mild-mannered man, losing his cool when Jar Jar reenacted a scene from Thunderpants at my parents' anniversary dinner. I kind of want to know what's meant by, like, losing his cool. Did he scream at him? I really hope he scrumped at him. Anyway, back to Lucy's approval. Lucy wanted to get married and have babies, and she couldn't imagine how any woman could have different desires. I'd espoused a pretty pessimistic attitude toward romance, and that worried Lucy because she wanted her version of quote-unquote the best for me, which was both sweet and slightly annoying. Both of us had been boy crazy in middle school and high school, but once we got to college, Lucy's boy craziness went off the charts, while mine simmered down. Now that I had a raging crush on a guy, Lucy was thrilled for me. She had her own raging crush on a recently divorced dude she'd met in a production of Noises Off, but she suspected that he was gay, and yeah, he was. Is that the reason for the divorce? And yeah, Lucy does seem cool, but not particularly here. We're two separate people. I know you want our kids to grow up together, and maybe they will or maybe they won't. Maybe mine won't exist. We'll have to see how it goes. OP says, did I suspect the same of Dennis? That he was gay? OP says, of course. After what my voice teacher told me about the prima donna attitude and the pretentious theater camp, yeah, my gaydar was definitely activated, so Lucy and I would spend hours every night that week musing over whether or not our respective crushes liked to chug dong. We met up with George Gay, presented our cases, allowed him to stalk our crushes on social media, and asked him for his expert opinion. Of course, George asserted that they were both flaming gaylords. Obvi. I mean, theater actor doesn't automatically mean gay. Musical theater actor, that's a little gayer. Not in a bad way, just as an observation. But the very next week, Dennis offered to walk me to my car after class and properly kissed me in the parking lot, and it was a really good kiss. The baby bear's porridge of kiss. Not too short, not too long, not too aggressive, not too timid. Just right. How was the moisture content? Because it's easy to get that wrong. My heart soared. I nearly had a wreck on the way home because I was too busy singing along with Liza Minnelli to drive properly. Oh, yeah, they're in my favor. Something's bound to begin. I don't know Liza Minnelli. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself, but also please don't die. Well, it would be a while before anything of note began. Dennis casually mentioned that he was a born-again Christian. The Christian part was cool, but just how born-again are we talking? Dennis, don't you worry. I'm not a virgin or anything. Wink. OP, yeah, you didn't strike me as that, but I couldn't read that wink. Dennis leaned closer and whispered, I think I want you. OP, I think that statement would be hotter if you were sure. Dennis, I sometimes struggle with intimacy, babe. I have to call my best friend in New York and get him to pray about it. I'll have an answer for you by this weekend. Dude, what the hell's that even mean? Your best friend tells you who you want to boink? Does he ask for pictures of the girl or just like Jesus knows? It's fine. I flip a coin, I tell him what Jesus said. OP says, but I never asked for that. I like you, but that doesn't mean I'm focused on the intimacy. Let's maybe just enjoy getting to know each other. And then he put his arm around me and launched into Barone's monologue from Love's Labor's Lost. When I got home, I Googled that monologue and pored over every word for hours, trying to decide whether Dennis had been trying to tell me something without saying it outright, or if he was just randomly monologuing, as he was wont to do. Dread Prince of Plackets, King of Codpieces, a whitely wonton with a velvet brow with two pitch-black balls stuck to her face for eyes. I've never really studied Shakespeare in depth, since I've always been a musical theater nerd, so I felt confused, and a little bit dumb. Don't let him make you feel... He's doing it on purpose to be pretentious. If you looked any deeper than surface level, you'd quickly realize that, yeah, he is randomly monologuing. Here's a thing that felt smart to say, but didn't actually fit the situation. Wow, impressive. And then I got a message from Dennis that made me feel all tingly on one hand, but it was strange on the other hand. It wasn't a selfie, certainly wasn't a sausage selfie. It looked like he'd hired a professional photographer to snap golden hour pics on the mountainside. The golden hour god was shirtless, with his jeans partially undone, showing off black, shiny underwear. His upper body looked amazing. Not beefy, but nicely toned, my preference, and he seemed to be going for a smoldering face, but he actually looked kind of aggressive. I call it blue steel. He really is just a fuckboy, isn't he? I mean, he didn't come out with the sausage selfie right away, which, bravo. OP replies, very artsy, very handsome, much wow. Dennis, so, is that a yes? OP, what was the question? He sent me a wave file. Don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? I sent her an 80s song. Bitches love 80s songs. OP, you look great, that's for sure. More factors contribute to that kind of wanting than good looks, though. My question is, do you want me, Dennis? Well, if I say it outright, it's a sin. OP, like I said, it doesn't need to be about intimacy. I genuinely like you as a person. I'm grateful to have you in my life. Isn't that more important? Dennis, got it. Never mind. OP, I'm trying to be supportive of your beliefs. I'm trying not to put pressure on you. Have I said something wrong? No response. You bruised his massive ego, which, to be fair, is so large and sensitive that just by merely breathing on it, it probably becomes bruised in some way. OP texts again and says, please finish this conversation with me. I'm not mad, and I really do think you look amazing in the picture. I didn't hear from him again that night. In fact, I'd heard nothing by the time the next abnormal psych class rolled around. My chest was in knots. My hands were like ice. I could feel my knees knocking like a nervous cartoon character's. And then he sauntered in. He and I usually sat together in the front row, playfully trying to outdo each other when it came to answering questions or offering examples. We really were a couple of Hermiones. The professor teased us about being overzealous, but he also liked us because he could tell that we took the class very seriously. I loved having someone to sit with who was as committed to his study as his... Wait, what the hell? Uh-oh, trouble in paradise. As I was once again admiring random things about him and wondering exactly what it meant that we'd been sitting together since the first day of class, Dennis altered his saunter and almost skipped to the back of the classroom, where he launched into a comedic monologue that I didn't recognize in front of a small group of girls. They giggled. My blood boiled. My face went hot. The tightness in my chest released and morphed into a swarm of bees, repeatedly stinging me from the inside. Well, don't let him miss out on the fun. Go scream some bees into his face.
Not the bees! Ah! Open my eyes! Eyes!
I made a dramatic show of slamming my books onto the table, and then I sat down very gingerly, crossed my ankles, and poised myself. Book open to the appropriate chapter. A signed article, printed, highlighted, covered in post-it notes, and ready for me to critique. Favorite pen resting in my left hand atop one of those frankly ridiculous Lisa Frank notebooks that I refuse to stop using, despite being a freaking adult and going through 3 or 4 of them per class. This one had colorful dolphins on it. Yeah, that's the cool thing about being an adult. You can do whatever you want. If I want to wear a Dora the Explorer backpack tomorrow, I can. Can't tell me shit. I mean, people probably will try to, but you don't have to listen. I could hear the girls in the back politely clap, but I couldn't tell if they were mocking Dennis or getting smitten with him. Either way, I was irrationally mad at them. The golden goofball pulled up a seat in the front row, but not next to me for once. My hands were shaking now. I steeled myself and exhaled as Dr. Roman took his place at the podium and instructed us to take out the materials that were already neatly arranged in front of me. You know what this means, don't you? This means war! Up to that point, I had been pretending to Dennis that I found the class challenging, since it was a second-year class, and I had decided to take it during my first year. In truth, I loved the class. I had learned to use the DSM-4 as an undergrad, and I was asking for Dennis's help to facilitate feelings of manliness in him, and to have an excuse to talk to him. It worked for Katie Heron, remember? Seems like Mean Girls might have been on to something. It's a really good movie.
I don't get this. Do you get any of this?
Nice job, Katie.
Kinda seems like you get it.
I didn't worry about getting caught because I wasn't playing dumb. I was just pretending to need a little too much guidance. Barf! Please don't downplay your own intelligence to make some prima donna's head get even bigger so that maybe he'll like you, because yeah, that's super cringe. I see that clearly now. Hell, I'll see it very clearly before the end of the story. I take your point, OP, but if I downplay my intelligence anymore, I become a vegetable. I have to stay this way. You don't understand. Dennis turned to me and said aloud, "Are you cool if I sit over here?" My grip tightened on my favorite pen, and I ground my ankle bones together, covertly took in a deep breath, and said in an icily sweet voice, "Why wouldn't I be?" I flashed him a fake smile, sat up even straighter, and focused on the PowerPoint presentation on the screen. That's right, war is not a game of guns and missiles anymore. You don't want to cut him with your words. It's all about politics. You gotta do a little 4D chess. And it seems to me like OP's played before. After I'd held my own in class, with no help from Dennis and his magnificent brain, he waited for me at the end of the front row as everyone was leaving. "Looks like you don't need my help with the DSM anymore." I caught his gaze, and he quickly looked down at the table. "That's right. You're finally shot of me, Dennis." "I don't want to shoot you. Babe, you have to understand." OP, I meant rid of me. The Brit comes out when I'm cross. Dennis grabbed my shoulders and belted, "Suddenly Seymour!" which I guess is a song. I shrugged him off. "Save it. I got things to do after class." Dennis, "Wait, babe, I thought you liked my singing." Ha ha. The love bombing didn't work. Of course, his answer to that is just going to be to love bomb harder. At least until he disappears completely. Because again, you have to nurture the dependence before you neglect emotionally. Then you inspire hope, and then you separate entirely, right? We got a syllabus right up front. Here's the playbook. Opie says, I spun around and said in a quieter voice, so as not to become a spectacle, "This has nothing to do with your singing. You got super weird with me last week, and you've been avoiding me ever since. Have an adult conversation with me, or fuck off." Dennis, "Babe, you know I don't curse." OP, "Yeah? Well, sometimes I do." Oops. So much for not making a spectacle. I tightened my grip on my stack of books and notebooks, made a clawed fist with my keys like I always do as I'm leaving a public space, and stalked out of the building. I kind of expected Dennis to run after me and finish our conversation in private, since he had not been following what I was trying to say to him, but when I reached my silver Prius, customized with geeky decals all over the back windshield, I turned around to find myself alone. My heart, having been pounding in self-righteous fury during the long walk to the parking lot, now sank dejectedly into my belly. I felt ill. Yeah, this little chase me. Will they, won't they? Oh my god. It's exhausting. I could see it at 20. He's doing it at 30 years old. How is that even possible? Then again, Big Ed and Boogie 2988 and a bunch of other people are 50 years old and still aren't even close to getting it figured out, so I don't know. Maybe 30 is not as bad as I think. Anyway, later that night, Dennis rang. Not a text, an actual voice-on-voice phone call. I wanted to ignore it the way that he'd ignored my texts the previous week, but Dennis always made my spine feel funny. Not the way that nasty-ass neckbeards or creepy nice guys powder our spines, but you know when you're so into someone that a chill runs all the way down your spine and then a charge rushes right back up your spine whenever you encounter them? Is that just me? I never had it happen, sorry. Anyway, I was under the spell of the crush, and I had no desire to break it yet. OP, did you mean to call me, or was this a butt dial? Dennis laughed.
No, I wanted to call. Actually, I wanted to see you.
OP, why? I feel like I never say the right thing to you, and I just wind up getting on your nerves when I'm trying to give you compliments, Dennis.
I think I could communicate better in person.
OP, yeah, same. Are we the last of the humans who prefer face-to-face interaction, Dennis?
Maybe it's a theater person thing.
Probably it is. I can't count myself aboard the face-to-face interaction boat. I don't like it none too much. I wanted to point out that he had been complete dog shit at communicating in class earlier that day, but it felt like we were bonding again. Even if the matter was relatively trivial, my anger was going away, and I was starting to jones for a hug from the golden god. So I agreed to meet up at a coffee shop near his apartment. That's all it took, huh? He's pressuring you into something face-to-face because he wants to pressure you into something physical, which you can only do face-to-face. I wouldn't do it. I ain't having none of this. I hope you come out of this okay, OP. OP says he was super intense when I walked into the coffee shop. He stood up, adopted a purposeful, motivated, manly stride as he made his way to the entryway. Well, probably as manly as a stride as his little legs can do. And he wrapped me up in an uncomfortably tight embrace that nonetheless warmed my heart. I got a little high on the mandarins and mountain air. When he finally pulled away, he took my hand, laced his fingers through mine, led me to a booth, and insisted that we sit beside one another. OP, Dennis, I'm getting whiplash. I don't know if you loathe me or like me. Dennis,
I like you, just maybe I like you too much. That's why I get sensitive.
He's a sensitive little guy. That's why I ignored you for a week. My emotions matter more than yours because I'm just so sensitive. It's like the most BS excuse in the world. He took off his glasses and pulled me in for a long, deliberate kiss. What was happening? He hadn't kissed me like that since the very first time that we'd kissed. When we finally unlocked our lips, he took my face in his hands and was able to hold eye contact with me for the first time in a long time. His voice shook as he said quietly,
I want you.
OP, okay, you mean... And Dennis nodded. I pulled back a little and took his hands. Listen, it doesn't have to be a big deal. I'm not even sure that I'm ready to completely take that plunge. Dennis,
I thought you thought it was attractive.
I do. I stroked his soft, stylishly unkempt hair, but he pulled away. I continued trying to talk sense to the lad. I mean it. I really do. You're gorgeous. I've just never had great experiences with that, and honestly, I'm kind of scared. Dennis,
I told you I'm not a virgin. I know how to do it.
You're sort of missing the whole point. OP says that's not what I'm scared of. I'm scared of pain. Dennis seemed to regain some of that over-the-top confidence that he typically radiated. He sat up straighter. A glint began to bedazzle his hazel eyes, and he smirked a little.
Wow, now you're sounding more like the virgin.
OP has the Chad answer, saying, yeah, I'm okay with that. Perfectly executed. If it's ever gonna happen, I'd prefer that you treated me like that instead of trying to recreate some scene from an adult video. That's what most guys do, and it totally takes me out of the game. Yeah, you could get her to do all the things she does in the adult videos. You just gotta warm her up a little bit first, you know? I'm not giving tips here. Dennis made an ick face.
I've never even seen anything of that nature. I wouldn't even know how to begin to create that kind of trash.
Uh-huh, sure, buddy. OP, well, that actually does make me feel calmer about going there, Dennis.
Right now?
I shrugged. It happens when it happens.
Dennis. Can it please be now? I'm not kidding, Val. There's an egg. He gestured to his crotch. Okay, got it. I guess this was happening. That's all he has to do is point out his blue balls. He left a $20 bill on the table, even though I'm pretty sure he only had a cup of coffee and I hadn't had the chance to order anything at all, since the server had been too uncomfortable to approach the table. Surprisingly, it went quite well. For the first time in my life, I was intimate with a guy who took things slowly. Well, he took it slowly once I told him that it wasn't going to happen at all unless he pumped the brakes. Out in the world, Dennis was constantly on stage, but in the bedroom, he acted like a normal human being. He was considerate. He was careful not to hurt me. The actual intimacy was over very quickly, but we were able to give it a go later that night. After some shockingly normal pillow talk, where Dennis finally stopped acting like the center of the universe for one peaceful moment, I stood up to get dressed. Dennis, hey, you're not sleeping over? OP, no. Takes me a while before I can literally sleep with someone. Dennis, but we just... OP, it's a different kind of intimacy. Different kind of trust. I was the kid who couldn't go to sleep at slumber parties. Not even in high school. Dennis, you had your parents come get you? That's cute. OP says, no. I usually just started staring at the ceiling and made up stories in my head all night. If you really want me to stay over, I can stare at your ceiling all night. Maybe I'll think of a good story while you sleep. Dennis, nah, that's cool, actually. I love that you're not clingy. I leaned over and kissed him. He let me take the lead for once. Don't mistake my clinginess for lack of caring, because I do like you. And then I added in a tone that was both playful and stern, don't ever freaking ignore me again, though. Mutual respect from here on out. Dennis, absolutely. Yeah, totally for reals this time. As my jelly legs carried me to the parking lot of Dennis's apartment complex, I finally understood what people meant when they said they were satisfied after knocking boots. You gotta smoke a cigarette after that one. In the past, I had always felt a perverse sense of accomplishment for having endured the unpleasantness of bumpy thrusts and bizarre noises, and the repetition of that hideous phrase, yeah, baby, I know you like that. I didn't, but I had liked what had just happened with Dennis, as if I hadn't been smitten enough already. Now my brain was swirling with oxytocin. I was done for. Yeah, for a little while. You gotta take this ride. You gotta learn this lesson. It's just how it be sometimes. For the next few weeks, Dennis was a sweetheart. He was still braggadocious, and being madly in love with him by this point, I found it endearing. We saw each other several times a week, and I felt increasingly at ease around him. I was even comfortable enough to literally sleep in the bed with him from time to time. Ooh, I just felt it. I've been writing a bunch of awkward romance, but I haven't really provided any smut or good cringe. Is my pathetic crush cringeworthy? I really have no way of knowing how this bit of the story is going to play. Apologies, it will get gross here in a minute, though. Yeah, I think that's what everybody's waiting for. But I am being patient with this one, give me a bit of backstory, that's fine. I'm putting all the pieces together now. Basically, Dennis was as full of himself as ever, but he was super nice now that I was a direct line to his precious orgasm. And the bedroom stuff remained great, for the first few weeks at least. And then the semester ended, and Dennis went radio silent. I crumpled into a complete mess, crying on the phone to Lucy, going out and getting drunk as my body would permit as a massive F you to Dennis's arrogant abstinence. And I wrote. Holy shit, I wrote. Pages upon pages of nauseating, meandering prose about a vanishing romance, not unlike what's coming out of my brain right now as I attempt to channel 2011 Dennis-obsessed Val. And then Dennis called me out of the blue, acting like nothing was weird. He wanted me to come over and, yeah. I was elated that things were back on, and I assumed he would explain his absence. He didn't. He stroked the side of my face, kissed my forehead, and stared at me intensely. OP, what's up? Something wrong, or is this a dramatic moment? Dennis, I trust you. I feel safe with you. They're just words that he's saying. Don't believe the words. You have to look at the actions. OP says, okay, thanks. That means a lot to me. Dennis, I think we're a great team, too. In and out of bed. My heart was pounding. Dennis said, Val? And OP said, yes. Dennis, I need to ask you something. You can give it some thought if you need to, because it's a pretty big ask. Oh my god. This was it. He must have needed those few weeks to do some soul searching. He was about to say he loved me. He was about to ask me to be his girlfriend. At the very least, he was about to ask, Dennis, can we, do it in the butt?
What's that?
Girl, that's a booty hole.
That'll deflate those romantic thoughts pretty fast, huh? OP says, what? Huh? Dennis? Stuff in the butt? I sat up and covered my nakedness with his shirt. No! Ew, what's wrong with you? Dennis? I mean, lots of people do it. OP, I don't. Dennis? Oh, okay. Well, I certainly wouldn't want to be that pushy guy who pressures you into doing something you're not comfortable with, but could we maybe... OP, no! Butt stuff is not up for discussion. It's a hard pass for me, dude. I thought you were Christian. Dennis, I am! That's why I want to switch to the butt, because it's not a sin.
It's God's wish, my dear. All right.
I'm pretty sure it's sodomy, but okay. Whatever helps you get through the week, I guess. OP says, oh, for God's sakes. Don't take the scripture so literally. Butt stuff between men and women isn't mentioned in the Bible because people didn't even talk about that shit back then. Dennis, no, it's a purer form of lovemaking because you can't get pregnant. That's right, gay sex, the purest form of lovemaking. Because you can't get pregnant, you see. OP says, pure? Sticking your dong in the poop chute is supposed to be pure? You're deluded. Dennis, I wouldn't need to wear rubber if you let me go back in. I kind of struggle with the morality of contraception, too. Oh, now we're just all laying it all on the table, huh? Now that we're back together, I want to go raw and also do butt stuff. Did you just get back together? OP says, are you insane? Butt stuff is the easiest way to spread STIs. Dennis says, really? But you can't get pregnant. Alright, I guess there's still mucous membranes and stuff. OP says, yeah, and you're more likely to bleed, so you're more likely to get cooties in your bloodstream. Can we stop talking about this? It's making me queasy. Dennis, I get it. It's just a thought. Are you gonna stay the night? OP, not tonight. I need to go home and wash off this conversation, but I'll call you later, okay? And I'm sure he'll answer. Dennis nodded, but he didn't answer when I called him. Perfect, right on cue. He blocked me on Facebook. He didn't return my emails. Okay, that was that, I suppose. By refusing his butt-blasting request, I had ruined my chances with the good and good. I began to consider trying it. I could get a high colonic. I'd get George Gay's advice on the best lubricants. Even if it was as awful as I predicted it would be, it would show him that I was willing to put his needs before my comfort level. That's love, right? What? No. The whole thing I've been saying about the two-way street, the happy medium. Were you not listening at all? But let the chips fall where they may, I guess. You'll figure it out eventually, I guess. Opie says, oh my god, it's not love. No, you little romance novice, get a clue. I just had to wait for him to finish feeling slighted and get turned on and swallow his pride and call me up, acting like he hadn't dropped off the face of the earth for, what was it now, over a month? Ugh. I'm pressing pause right here while Dennis is radio silent because I get a sense that it's getting long. Next time I see you, George Gay and I will be rehearsing for Cats. I don't think I could put up with being anybody's booty call. Like, that's exactly what this is, but somehow OP has tricked herself into thinking that's not what it is because of the words that he says. I trust you now. I trust you so much, I'm gonna go in the poop chute. I don't think that's how any of that works, Dennis, but okay. Not really okay. But he'll get his just desserts eventually. We'll see you soon enough. Thanks for joining me, friends, for this episode. Join up on the Patreon if you would. YouTube membership's also highly appreciated. If you can't throw me money monthly, though, I mean, that's no big deal. I just appreciate you coming through, watching the thing, hanging out. And I hope that you will always remember, friends, that you are loved, you are worthy, you definitely deserve it, and I shall see you in the next one. So until then, bye-bye.